Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and everyone knows the name Spielberg, as in Steven Spielberg, one of the most celebrated directors and filmmakers of our time, who gave us, among a boatload of other iconic films, Schindler's List. In many ways, a groundbreaking feature film about the Holocaust and the heroism of Oskar Schindler, a righteous Gentile who saved some 1,200 Jews by employing them in his munitions factory in occupied Poland. But if you only associate the name Spielberg with Steven, you are missing another extremely gifted and brilliant filmmaker who is actually responsible for a series of outstanding documentary films that are Jewish-themed and extremely important to anyone who wants to understand how the seminal events of the 20th century have shaped Jewish life today. It is a very wonderful pleasure for me to welcome to L'Chaim Nancy Spielberg, who's the producer and executive producer of such wonderful films as Above and Beyond, the fabulous story of American pilots who flew in World War II and who then became the genesis of the Israeli Air Force in Israel's War of Independence. Nancy Spielberg's films also include The Barn, Elusive Justice, The Search for War Criminals, Hava Nagila. And in 2015, Nancy was the executive producer of a PBS TV show chosen by the New York Times as one of the best of 2015, Mimi and Donna. And as we tape this edition of L'Chaim, Nancy Spielberg's latest film is the best documentary film on the Shoah that has been done in recent memory, perhaps ever. Now you should make a note of the name of this film. It's entitled, Who Will Write Our History? It is the most incredible mix of both restored film footage from the Warsaw Ghetto, brilliantly merged with dramatic reenactments of life in the Warsaw Ghetto, that vividly tells the story of a most important piece of Jewish history, which most people are completely unaware of, the Oyneg Shabes, a small group of amazing ghetto Jews who compiled a secret archive of documents and letters and posters and photographs documenting the range of brutal atrocities the Germans inflicted upon the Jews of Warsaw and the heroism of the Oyneg Shabes, led by a remarkable Jew whose name should be known by every child and adult alike, Dr. Emanuel Ringelblum. I cannot say enough about Who Will Write Our History, which is written and directed by Roberta Grossman and is based on a book by Sam Cassell. It is an absolute must-see for any adult, Jewish or non-Jewish. And it is such a kick for me to have you at this table. I've wanted to meet you for so long. You are wonderful. Thank you for making the effort to be with us today.
I'm so happy to be here. I really am. I'm a fan of yours.
Oh.
I watch the show.
That gives me chills. Thank you. Nancy, I want you to know, you heard what I said.
Wow.
It is, you know, there's a phrase in Hebrew, Yotzei min haklal. It is out of this world. And it is unlike anything. When I was young, I saw a film, I don't know if you probably have seen it, Siget Siget. Did you ever see Siget Siget?
No.
Okay. Siget Siget is, imagine, a young Elie Wiesel just talking to a camera for an hour and a half about his life in Siget. And it's a companion to the book Night.
Right.
And you have here what I thought was an extraordinary documentary presentation, as Night, for me, was a small, unpretentious book that didn't seem terribly gory, and then when you were done, you were absolutely drained.
Yeah, yeah.
And those books stayed, that book and that movie stayed. Schindler's List is a different kind of, Schindler's List is a feature film. I'm talking about documentaries about the Shoah. And there seemed to be, Nancy, a gazillion.
Right.
And then lo and behold, here comes Who Will Write Our History. And I'm sitting there, I am transfixed. I am learning what I've never seen before and what I've learned before. And most important, we'll talk about this as we move on. I cannot imagine how you got the film footage of this movie. And if you've seen a lot of documentaries, you see the same footage over and over and over. Right. Not that it isn't valuable, it is, but all right already, I've seen it. And even that's not fair. It's not all right already. It's just, but there's nothing new. And now, almost, except for a couple of photographs, there's almost nothing in your film that we have seen before.
Right.
And then, as I try to explain to the audience, it's merged with actors. And so at the one moment, there's black and white film footage, and then we go to color, where you have actors portraying the characters who we've just been reading about. And at the very end of the film, we see photographs of all of these human beings. These are human beings. And I guess that's the strength of your film. It's about human beings. And I get chills telling you, it makes Jews human. It makes the story human. And so often, Nancy, 6 million is just a number.
Yeah.
It's an overwhelming number. It's not about 6 million. It's about 6 million individual fathers and mothers and grandparents and aunts and uncles and children and grandchildren. They're all in your film. Kol hakavod, mazal tov. You have done something for the ages. You should feel so wonderful, Nancy.
You know, you just said something which I say several times. This personalizes the Holocaust. It says that person is like me. That could have been me.
Yes.
You know, it really brings it. I mean, there's a picture of a woman sitting in the street, starving, and when I see her and the way her body is and the way she's sitting in the shoes she has on and the way her hair is, she looks like a friend of mine. Seriously, she looks like a friend of mine from Beverly Hills that could have been reduced to that, but still had the rags of her designer clothing. I mean, I'm not trying to belittle it.
No, you're exactly right.
But that's what
Perfect.
connected me. 6 million, we're desensitized to it.
Yes.
Except when, you know, Paper Clips did a good job of...
In a very different way.
In a totally different way, but because you can't fathom that. And it sort of gets lost. So here you've got a name, a face. You hear their voices. Every word that you're listening to is their written word. I think that was really what hit me.
Somewhere, years ago, there was a mother who knew that her son was the cleverest, the most talented, the most beautiful. And now the brightest and most beautiful child in the world lies in a strange street. And his name isn't even known.
We should have seen the worst coming. But we did not want to know the truth. We did not want to see it.
Does the world know about our suffering?
Emanuel Ringelblum understood that he had a story to tell, and it was the most important story he would ever have to tell.
Almost all the photography that we have was taken by the German propaganda unit.
Will the Germans write our history, or will we write our history?
Let the witness be our writing.
Their goal was to write the history of the war from the Jewish perspective. And there was no time to lose.
The worst scenario was in the process of happening.
Writing becomes the only recourse. That was the ultimate act of defiance.
You don't really need guns to fight. You could fight with paper and pen.
This is what made this collection of documents so absolutely unique.
One thing is clear to all of us. Our devotion and constant terror have not been in vain.
Among those taken away was Rabbi Uberman,
Geli 16,
Israel Lichtenstein,
Leib Golden,
Abraham Levin,
Halina,
Emanuel Ringelblum.
Remember, my name is Nahum Gazivich.
I am writing this as a witness.
I'm going to try to describe an experience I had watching the film, and I want to know if it resonates with you at all, and whether you can say it better than I can.
Okay.
Because you've had time to think about this in ways that I have not. We have images of who these people were. And a lot of the images come out of the camp, whether it's Auschwitz or Treblinka or Dachau.
Right.
And already that is an image. The reality, and it's what you alluded to when you said Beverly Hills, we start in your film, we see people living a very nice life.
Nice life, yep.
And many of them had money and had, I don't know if they were rich, but they were certainly well-to-do.
They went to 4 o'clock tea.
Yes.
Yeah, they
and
had the
we
fineries.
see them as people.
Right.
And they have children whom they love and they hug and they kiss at night. These are people. And we see in your film the transformation of what they went through, stage by stage. And that's what your film does.
Right.
It gives us months and years, and we see this. It didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly. And we see stage after stage after stage of the increasing degradation. The word humiliation is used a lot in your film.
Right.
The extent to which it's humiliating. And I'll say, then I want to hear you talk. At one point, whoever is, it's also helped with a narrator who's named Rachel.
Right.
But one of the things that's said is that all the video you're watching, we the people who are watching the movie are told by this narrator, all the people you're watching is video or stills taken by Germans.
Right.
We're seeing this through the German's eye. And first of all, what kind of human being wants to take pictures of this and video? And at the same time, thank goodness they did, because now we have it.
Right.
And but as I say to you, it's not simply that they're people. It's the arc of their life, which very often gets lost in the Shoah. We go right to the camp. And it's a process over many years. And your film shows that like no other film I've ever seen.
I think what, it is the slow process of dehumanization, which is what the Nazis intended. But where this is different is we do have a lot of films of how they died, how we were killed off, but not really how they lived and that process. And what's very interesting about using the Nazi propaganda footage is that that's a big issue. And people said to us, wait, you have dramatizations and then you have real footage from the Nazis. And we said, well, in this case, it's sort of flipped on its head.
It's brilliant.
Because really the dramatizations are the truth.
Right.
And the actual, archival footage is their propaganda footage.
Yes, but we should be clear. What's interesting is it's not just propaganda. The propaganda is making Jews look terrible.
Right. And
you show that brilliantly in the film. But the Germans wanted to show Germans cutting the beards of Jews.
Yes.
Humiliating them in the streets.
Right.
Beating them. And then toward the end of the film, because again, it is the arc of the Holocaust. I have never seen a film do it as well as yours. So that we start with people who are living like many of us live. No. Okay?
Yeah.
And in the end, they're naked in a ditch. And they're being dragged naked, and they're being raped, and they're being murdered. And it's not like we ever see a rape. But it's clear that we're looking at mass graves of naked Jews who were lined up on the edge of the grave, shot, and they all fell into the grave. And there's no camp scene, by the way, in your movie.
Right.
It's the Warsaw Ghetto story,
right,
including the uprising of the Warsaw Ghetto. And again, the brilliance of it is in the humanity.
I'm glad you say that, because I think that was the big point. Roberta found this book. Roberta Grossman is we joke saying her light beach reading is Holocaust topic because she's completely consumed with Holocaust.
Is she?
And yeah, complete. And when she read a review about Sam Cassell's book, she had never heard of the book or heard of Emanuel Ringelblum or the story.
Nobody has heard of this stuff.
I know. And Sam worked on that book for 10 years, but it's a very, it's a deep, detailed book. So it got through more on the educational angle.
Yes, it was not written
it's not,
for popular consumption.
No, it isn't. It's not on that top 10 bestsellers.
You took a scholarly book and made a compelling documentary film out of it.
And it was a very big story to tell. So you're really confined to the tools of documentary filmmaking within the confines of, time of attention spans of people. This was not going to be a 9-hour Shoah film.
Yes.
And trying to capture what these people did and in their bravery and their self-sacrifice in knowing that they were going to die, most likely, but committing to preserving, writing our history, writing the history from their perspective in real time, not from memory after, but as it was happening. So you get all the raw emotion coming through and preserving this for future generations that they wouldn't even take part in.
Yes. By the way, explain to our audience. I can do it, but I want you to do it. Explain to our audience, how is it that the dialogue is written and the story is told? Where does it come from?
Well, the Oyneg Shabes was a collection of diaries and, like you said, pronouncements or death notices or artist renderings or candy wrappers. It was a time capsule of life. And the diaries people wrote, and first it was this small secret group, and then it started to expand and they got more people to write. And as you said, they buried these diaries in the ground.
But the point is, these are your words in the film are the words that people wrote.
They are the written words.
This is real life. It's not some writer's imagination.
No, there's no creative. We did not take creative license in something like this. And I think when you're making a documentary, you really have to be on point because it's as if you're making a historical document. So with Above and Beyond also, we really wanted to do everything to, cross our T's, dot our I's, everything that could be carried forward as the truth and not, well, they went off and they exaggerated this or that. So someone is reading the words from the pages that were written by those hands.
At the time.
At the moment.
That's the movie.
Yeah, and that's what's
incredible.
Talk about
real. It is so real.
Yeah.
And again, as you said, and the audience should understand that ultimately, near the end of the Warsaw Ghetto, the people who were doing this archival work, and they did it, how prescient were they, by the way?
Yeah.
They started this early.
Right.
And they collect all of this archival material. The most compelling to me is the diaries that they have.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, just as the Warsaw Ghetto is being liquidated, they take all of this material and they bury it. And in the movie, you see him burying it under a wooden floor. And they ultimately bury 3 groups of archival material with the hope that one day it'll be found.
That somebody would survive.
Right. One man survived who knew where it was.
Yeah, Hirschwasser, right.
And also Rachel, who's our narrator, she survives. That story is in and of itself fabulous. And we see her in real life at the end of the film. But this man goes back, and they figure out from aerial photos where they buried it, and they find it, and you see them. Actually, you have film footage of them taking these cases out of this cave, sort of rubble from the destroyed Warsaw Ghetto. And then the dramatization shows them on a table, and they're opened.
Right.
And they're handed to Rachel, and she begins to cry. I'm crying.
Yeah, that finished me off. That finishes me off.
I assume that's Roberta.
Scene. Yeah.
Good for her.
Roberta's really, she's so artistic, and there's a very deep sensitivity and, and the smarts to go with it to sort of move this along to make sure that you've got the good, the bad, and the ugly in there. I mean, you've got everything, but
Yes.
it is that scene. I think what clinches it for me is really when you see the documents coming out of the ground, because there is no mistaking. This is not fabrication. This is real.
There's the MS if it's real.
Yeah, it
Anyway,
is.
Mazal Tov. And
Thank you
I
so
hope the
much.
audience, as they listen to this, now want to see it. Everybody should see it. Incidentally, how many children do you have?
I have 2 girls.
How old are they now?
My older daughter, Jessica, is 30
Yes.
and lives in Tel Aviv, and my little one is 26, Melissa, and she moved to LA. She's working with Roberta, actually.
Isn't that lovely?
Yeah. She's working with Roberta, and she rides horses, so it's like...
And your 30-year-old made Aliyah.
She did, yeah.
Mazal Tov, too. Okay. Reason I ask you is, at what age would you first want your children to see who will write our history?
That's a good question, because...
It's an adult.
Right.
It's hard.
It is hard. And, and I grew up knowing nothing of the Holocaust, so I didn't have any exposure to it. But I would say 8th grade, maybe?
Yes. It's not for
grade?
children.
No.
But for high school kids.
Right. We're cutting an educational version as well. So if we do need to, because it is a great story to tell. But because parts of it are really, really hard. So we're cutting an educational version, and it could be that some of that will be better for younger, but I don't think so. I think 8th grade is about it.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
And as I'm watching, I'm thinking to myself, very often there's an analogy made to Maccabees. These were Maccabees.
Yeah.
In the Warsaw Ghetto, these were Maccabees. And it wasn't about necessarily fighting, although at one point there is an uprising. It's interesting. Your film is so honest, Nancy. It's so honest. It wasn't because they wanted to win. It wasn't because they wanted to live. They knew they were going to die. They wanted to die making a statement.
They wanted to live on in history. They didn't want to be erased from the history
But
books,
the
which the Germans would have done.
The uprising itself, they weren't fooling themselves that they were going to defeat the German army.
Right.
They just weren't going down without saying,
without a fight.
Right.
And, they say that, and probably mostly these days, that Sam says it beautifully in the film. He says, you don't need guns to fight. You can fight with paper and pen. This was a battle for memory. Because really, they would have been written out of the history books. The
Absolutely.
Germans would have written them out. And they say it is the victors that write the history.
Yes.
It's not the victims. So
they made sure our story would be told if it were found.
Right.
And thank heavens it was found.
Not all of it.
Yes, there's a third cachet.
Right.
That is, the way the movie says it, it's under the Chinese
embassy in Warsaw, yeah.
Although, am I told that they did try to dig it up?
There was an attempt, and they found a couple of remnants of paper, so either it had been destroyed or possibly looted, because even the second cache, when they found it, was found by accident by construction workers.
Yes.
And there was this sort of, frenzy that the Jews buried everything, so start digging, you're going to find their gold and their diamonds. So they were like, great, look, we found the gems of the Jews.
Yes.
And instead they found papers, and they were about to toss them when the foreman of this construction group said, wait a minute, I know what that is. Because it turned out he had a Jewish girlfriend, and he had helped run papers. So he saved those papers and gave them to the Jewish Historical Institute.
Wow.
So it could be that the third cache that was under the embassy, or was under that building, could have been looted, and someone said, it's just papers, there's no gold and diamonds here, and just tossed. Or maybe it's still there, or maybe it was just destroyed in the rebuilding of the city.
There's one more detail that your movie does. And then the narrator makes reference to the fact that we normally never tell it this way. But the reality is that in the ending days of the Warsaw Ghetto, there was a Jewish police. And the Jewish police were told, you either round up these Jews or we will kill you.
And your family, yep.
And your family. And one of the hard things to see is the extent to which Jews end up brutalizing Jews to save their lives.
Yeah.
And your movie makes the point it's not part of the story we normally tell.
Right.
But it's part of the real story.
Yeah.
And your movie is a real story.
And somebody says in one of the writings, who raised these bitter
Yeah.
fruits among us?
Yes. Yes.
You know, who does that? Who can do that?
Yes.
And I think that, you know, after the Holocaust, there was a lot about the victims and the survivors. But people didn't want to sort of touch upon that dark part, that bad part about what did the Jews do against Jews. And Emanuel Ringelblum was furious about it. So he writes a lot about it. And I think that it is the honesty of the archive that, you know, makes it live even more so. It isn't just from recollection, and it's brutally honest. So I think, you know, it's important
Aren't
to
you
face
proud
that.
of this film?
I'm so proud.
Aren't you?
And I sit here and I listen to you and I think, I'm just one person, Roberta Grossman and all the people that worked on this, Chris Callister and the editors and Diana, the DP. I mean, there's so many people that get credit. So, you know,
well, you tell
I'm
them
glad
what
I'm sitting here. I will be the messenger of this incredible
one day,
lesson.
maybe we'll get you and Roberta back here.
Oh, she's just wonderful, yes. And by the way, people can see it because it's now on iTunes, and I think this week it will start on, I think, Vimeo On Demand and Hulu and a lot of the
that's fabulous. Okay.
streaming sites. So that will be wonderful.
So if somebody has Hulu, they can watch
Yes.
Who Will Write Our History.
Yes.
Very, very good. So talk to me a little bit about you.
Okay.
Because I'm fascinated how you become you and you end up doing these films. Okay? So you're a Spielberg. Where do you grow up?
Well, I was born in New Jersey.
Yes.
And when I was 6 months old, my father moved the family to Phoenix, Arizona. So that was 1957. Not a lot of Jews in Phoenix, but we didn't really connect, you know. We were gastronomically Jews, but we weren't really, you know, had no strong Jewish identity.
No.
Not really.
What was your father's name?
Arnold Spielberg.
Arnold, and your mother?
And my father, by the way, is 102 plus a few months.
Oh, my God.
Thank
Mazal
God.
tov.
I know, and he's an incredible brain. And my mommy, who passed away a couple years ago, her maiden name was Posner, Leah. So and then she remarried. My parents divorced. So she was Leah Adler. Leah Spielberg Adler.
Okay.
But, you know, we grew up sort of gypsies a little bit. My mom's background is sort of the Russian gypsy, and my dad's also, you know, my grandparents from Kamenets-Podolsk and another one from Odessa. So my father, you know, understands Russian from his parents, but my parents were born in Cincinnati, so we're very American.
Okay.
In a lot of ways.
Was there Jewishness in your home? Was there Shabbat in your home?
It was a weird kind of Jewishness.
What
like
was it?
Pesach,
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
I mean, I even took matzah sandwiches to public school. I was the only one with like stinky, garlicky salami, on, you know, with the oil from the salami going through the brown paper bag. The kids used to like move away from me. And that was basically Pesach. There was no messing around. And outside of that.
Who led the Seder?
My dad. My dad.
Did you ever have to do the 4 questions?
Always. I'm the baby of the family.
Can you do them now?
I hate it. I could.
Do a little bit.
Manishna halayla zeh mikol halaylot.
Mitsuyan.
Shebechol halaylot anu ochlim chametz o matzah halayla zeh kulo matzah. And my father, just a few weeks ago, at 102, we made him say the 4 questions as the oldest person in the room. And he sang it. I know. Yeah, it's really wonderful. I should show you the video.
How is his health?
Well, he just got out of the hospital yesterday, so he's got a lot of physical issues. His mind is very sharp, but he's got a wonderful team. He's on feeding tubes and oxygen and all that, but, you know, he goes on set with my brother. My brother said, come to New York, come watch, I'm filming West Side Story. And he's on the set Bridge of Spies and on the set of The Post, and my brother will shoot a scene and then say, Dad, what did you think? And Steve will say, well, you know, and then Steve will say, we're retaking that.
Is that true?
Yeah. My dad reads the scripts. My brother would give him 2 scripts, say, Dad, what do you think I should do next? So my dad chose Bridge of Spies.
Wow.
Because it sort of reminded him of when he was behind the Iron Curtain in the early days he was in the computer world. So there's always that familial connection.
Okay. How many siblings are there?
We are 4 altogether.
Where do you come?
I'm the baby.
I'm the baby.
So Steve's the eldest.
Yeah.
My sister Anne, who's a screenwriter.
Yes.
So her famous film is Big. The one with Tom Hanks.
Sure.
So that was her Oscar nomination. And Sue, who lives in Maryland, and she does marketing and promotions. And then I'm the mistake baby. But the best one.
Absolutely. Lucky us.
Right. So grew up with very little Jewish connection. You know, we were totally treif except for Passover, and different dishes, different everything. And outside of that, you know, our neighborhood was not Jewish. They were not friendly in that regard. Neighbors call us dirty Jews. And
really?
Yeah, so we had a lot of, and we sort of hid it. You know, we weren't proud of it. You know, it didn't get us friends, and it didn't necessarily got my brother beat up a couple times. So we grew up sort of like that, and with no mention of the Holocaust.
You're now talking a lot about observance. You were not an observant home.
Not an observant home.
Okay. Did you feel Jewish at the time, or does that come later in your life?
I felt Jewish I did feel Jewish, but not strongly. And that wasn't necessarily proud of it because it just caused me a lot of issues. And when you're in second grade and everybody's working on Christmas decorations and you know, the teacher hands you blue paper, cut out a Magen David just to make you feel good. You know, you don't sort of join in the same thing, but it wasn't because we were observant. But we didn't have Christmas lights, and everybody had Christmas lights. So right there, you feel sad. Christmas lights are fun. You know,
They are. They are.
They are. It's
Yes,
fun, and
of
you know, it
course.
just doesn't hang in blue and white. Just doesn't do it.
Right.
So, but we were involved in other things. We would go camping. And we'd go out into the desert, and my brother would make movies, and we were doing you know, we weren't.
Okay, so this was true for all four of you as kids.
Yes, all of us.
So.
But my brother had a bar mitzvah.
He did.
He did have a bar mitzvah, and my parents actually would go when they'd go to shul. They would go to a small Orthodox shul, but we weren't a part of it. You know, they sent us to Sunday school. We hated it.
Hated it.
I colored in pictures of Moses a couple times, and then we would say, you know, we'd much rather stay in the backyard and pick oranges off our trees and make fresh orange juice. And that's what we did on Sundays.
I understand.
Yeah, Sunday school is horrible.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. As children, by the way, is Stephen or anybody else playing with film already?
Steve was from an early. First, my dad, and it was about our camping trips.
What about your dad?
He was a computer engineer, and he designed like the very early stages of the computer and electric cash register, very into technical things. He had a camera. He would take home movies, and they were very boring. Like, you know, he's a computer electrical engineer. Everything has to line up. And Steve took the camera from him, and instead of taking boring pictures, would take pictures of the car pulling out of the driveway, focusing on the reflection of the bumper and, you know, just different angles. And then in Boy Scouts, Steve couldn't do something. He couldn't chin himself. And all the Boy Scouts had to, like, do pull-ups to get a merit badge. And so he approached his scout leader and said, can I just make a film? And, you know, we were in the desert, so you had that whole desert to play in, and can I get a badge like that? And he did that with his troop.
Good for him.
And he won his badge.
Good for him.
And that started it. He started, well, first we used to show films because we were very bored. There was nothing to do in Arizona. It was too hot. You know, we didn't have a swimming pool. We weren't wealthy by any means. We were straight middle class. We had sprinklers. And we'd go to the library and read books. And then Steve started to rent movies, the real movies. You know, we had a projector, and we would sell tickets to the other kids in the neighborhood, and they would come to our backyard. And we'd hang my parents' bed sheet on the clothesline, and that was the screen.
This is unbelievable.
Yeah, and we were the local movie house. You know, kids, you didn't go to movies that often.
Right.
And then from there, he started to make films with his buddies.
Okay.
They were Westerns.
Are the four siblings close?
Yes, we are.
That's lovely.
And it started there. I mean, he ruled. He definitely ruled. But we were his cast and crew. So
you were in the films?
Yeah, in the films, died in the films, tortured in the films. You know, saved a puppy in the films. There was all kinds.
Okay. Now, at some point, both of you, and I have no idea about your other two siblings, both of you begin to develop a strong Jewish identity.
Yes.
How and why?
Well, first, I think a lot of it had to do with when my parents divorced. My stepfather was a friend of my dad's. Juicy story. But no, it was really, he was in love with my mother secretly for years, and he had been raised Orthodox, but he was a bachelor. He was one of the founders of a Hebrew school in Phoenix. And we never really felt connected to our public school and our friends there who could change their colors. And so my sister Sue, who's 2 years older than I am, and I went to Hebrew school. We had a chance. And that just felt like a very comfortable environment. It just felt natural.
How old were you?
I was 11.
Okay, you were still pretty young.
Oh yeah, I was young. I was young.
Although you didn't like Sunday school.
I loved Hebrew school.
Hebrew school, isn't that interesting?
I know. Well, it was different. I learned Hebrew. I was really good at Hebrew. I learned kosher. I learned how to make a challah. I loved the brain. There was just all the learning that went on and the dissection of everything and all the meanings. I just loved it. I don't know. It felt really good. And the people felt like me, probably uncomfortable in the outside world, not embraced well in Phoenix, and finding each other. There was a camaraderie. There was a kinship.
Did you ever experience anti-Semitism?
Well, back then, yes. Back then, from the neighbors that called us dirty Jews,
Yeah,
the Spielbergs are dirty Jews and stole our toys. And, at that early age, I did, when I was 15, a friend of mine's father sort of tore into me, and I think he was drunk, I don't know, but I was 15 and I was over at their house, and he went, "You Jews, you think you own the world." And and I knew to respect elders. And I'm sitting in her house, and I just had no idea how to respond to that.
How scary that must have been.
It was very unsettling. I went
Yes.
home, and I said to my parents, I was shaking.
Yes.
Like an older, it was John Birch Society, these guys were gun-toters. And my stepfather at that point, when my mom was married to my stepfather said, "You are no longer allowed to go there, and you can't see her either." And I was 15, and I was part of we had our clique, and she was part of the clique. So that would have meant I would have to stand up and say, I'm not going to be part of my best friends, and I never really stood up to her.
That's hard, Nancy.
I know, but I, to this day, sort of held on to it, because when she would make jokes, I understood that it sort of came from a deeper place. Mm-hmm. She was taught that. Mm-hmm. That was taught by her parents. It was clear what they talked about at the dinner table. Mm-hmm. So
you're 11 years old at a Hebrew school. Is Stephen going to the same Hebrew school?
No. He's already, he's 9 years older than I am.
Okay,
he's already
gone.
out of the house.
Okay.
He's trying to go to school. He's making movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and Sue and I were the two. And we came home one day to our mom and Bernie, and we said, we can't have play dates here because our house isn't kosher, so we want to make the house kosher. And my mom said, sure, that's fine.
Good for you and good for her.
We ate out and everything.
Yes,
we went out for lobster.
But your house was kosher.
Our house was kosher. And through the teen years, I hated Shabbos because I couldn't go out with my friends. And my stepfather said, the phone comes off the hook. We're having a Shabbos dinner together, which we actually still enjoyed it once we got into it, singing and sharing stories around the table. And then the phone went back on, and then we would go out. So that went on until I was 18. I had one foot in each world. In high school also, with that girl and a few other situations, I felt... I felt the anti-Semitism. There were no Jews and no blacks in my school. That was it. There was one other kid, David Einstein.
You remember his name?
Yeah, and I was like not interested. And so that was it. I don't remember any other Jews. Maybe they just weren't connected. So, and I already had learned from Hebrew school what Shabbos was about. And I still didn't keep it, but when we did, we would go to the other side of town for the high holy days and stay with somebody and walk to shul. So
right.
I knew more.
You wouldn't write it?
Wouldn't write, yeah.
Yeah. What happens in college?
Well, we moved to Los Angeles. I went to UCLA. They called that JUCLA for a reason. And my sister and I met up with a whole bunch of kids and became friends through Israeli dancing. We were looking for friends. We already sort of knew that was the way we wanted to go. Met all these B'nai Akiva and NCSY kids, and we sort of got sucked into that. And my stepfather discovered Chabad in Westwood, so it was the campus Chabad, so it was energy. It was youthful, and it was pounding the tables, and my mom said, I'm not cooking anymore, we're eating at Chabad. So Friday night, I would work in the kitchen of Chabad, and so, we got...
Warm memories?
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Wonderful, yeah, and then I went to Israel, and that just then...
How old, roughly?
I was 19 going on 20.
You were in college already?
Yeah. And I dropped out of college, and so did my sister Sue. We went home to my mother. It was one Yom Ha'atzmaut. We met a shaliach from B'nai Akiva at a Yom Ha'atzmaut celebration. He said, you should go to Israel, do an ulpan, go to my kibbutz, my family will take care of you. We went home. We sat my mom down, and doubleheader. We said, we're both dropping out of college, and we're going to live on a kibbutz to pick corn. And my mom said, it's such a great idea. And you know, and my dad, who's divorced, remember, my dad's all about education, super, super. So he was not thrilled, though he loved the experience as long as we would go back to school. And being in Israel just, it did it for me.
What was it like?
I felt like I really was home. It was so comfortable. So 5 months turned into a year. And the college apps came back, and we kept shoving them under the mattress on kibbutz. And I was going to stay. I was really, and Sue and I both were going to stay. That was it. And then my parents just said, you know what, come home and find your bearings. You know, don't do anything too drastic. And so we went home. And then it's always hard to go back. You know, I didn't have money, but I did. I went back the summer later, another 4 months.
Did you go back to UCLA?
Yes, but I never went back full time. I went back to night school, and I started working. I was working, waiting for a semester start, and then I was getting promotions, and I never finished college officially.
And what about your sister?
She also never finished officially. Isn't that terrible?
No.
My brother only finished after he handed in Schindler's List, because my brother, we're all dropouts, basically, except my brother went back, handed Schindler's List in as a final project to Cal State Long Beach, and he graduated, because he had to show his children, you need to go to college. So I still went to college. I came here, I went to Sarah Lawrence, I went to New School. I'm always about education.
Yes,
I
you're
just
obviously
didn't get the paper.
I understand. And you told us how you end up with a Jewish identity, and it has a lot to do with Israel.
Right.
And and Steven Spielberg comes along, and he makes Schindler's List. And the way it's told in the street is, this was not a guy who had a strong Jewish identity before Schindler's List.
Right.
And something motivated him to do it, and it changed him.
Yes.
So if that's true, why did he do Schindler's List?
Schindler's List was brought to Steve by Sid Sheinberg, who was then the head of Universal, and had actually given Steve his first break and hired him to direct when he was 21 years old, gave him a contract. And Sid said to Steve, you need to do this story. And Steve said, I'm not touching that. That's like, if I screw that up, you know, there's no coming back from that. That is just sacred material. And for 10 years, there was this back and forth. I'm not going to do it. At one point, Steve tried to get Martin Scorsese to do Schindler's List, and Steve was going to direct Cape Fear. They were talked about switching projects. And I think that the thing that sealed the deal was Kate, his wife, who was a very spiritual person. She decided to convert, and she converted lefi halacha. She did it with Orthodox rabbis. Her decision completely, because we didn't want to push anything, because, you know, we just had to come from her. And I think that Kate brought a deeper, you know, just whether it was Steve looking into himself and what was important to him and where he came from, and he had children at this point. And I think all that together prompted him to take this on. But I don't think he knew what was going to.
That's very honest.
He did not know what was going to hit him until he was there.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember that period by any chance?
Yeah. I didn't go on location. I was very pregnant.
Did your father go?
My father went. My mom went. My stepfather went. I think Rabbi Heyer went on location. You know, it was the gang. And I do remember that Steve was having a very tough time, that he was very depressed. And
because?
It was just too hard to handle. He said everywhere he walked, he felt that he was stepping on fragments of bones. And that, you know, it just really threw him. Suddenly he started to think about where we came from. And, you know, okay, my parents are born in Cincinnati, but what happened before that? And, you know, what part of my family came here because of the pogroms? And, you know, there's all of that persecution and the reason for it. And I think the more that people on set shared with him their personal stories of survival, the more he got into it. And he used to call Robin Williams at night to bring him out of his depression. And Robin would just do these, like, you know, manic dialogues just to lift his spirit a little bit. Mm-hmm. But it changed him. He came home a changed person. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you think it's a change in a good way?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was creating the Shoah Oral History, the Visual History Foundation, which is now the USC Shoah Foundation, was, I think, one of the first times that the general population stopped to listen to survivors.
Yes.
And listen. Yes. Not just go, yeah, 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 and get out of my way, you pushy person in the grocery store line. But, you know, really respect them. And I think a lot of survivors who would not speak spoke up for the first time. So it opened the floodgates. And even so many people said, that's the closest that a film or documentary has come, but it was much worse. And people say that still, that it was still much worse, but at least the world felt something.
That is correct.
So
you remember seeing this film for the first time?
Yeah.
You see a final cut for the first time?
The first time I saw it was, I read the book, and the first time I saw it was in D.C. with Clinton and it was a big Washington thing. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know that the audience couldn't move afterwards. People were frozen, silence. You know, I do remember Clinton was sitting in front of me and his bodyguards were sitting behind him, big guys, and I just remember watching their shoulders shake because they were sobbing, these big tough men. You know, and it wasn't their history, it wasn't their people. You know, so it's interesting.
It's a brilliant film by your brother. It's black and white, and then there's a moment in color.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so he did a wonderful job.
And you know, the studio did not want him to do it in black and white. It was a huge argument. They
it was a brilliant decision.
Black and white films don't. Nobody expected it to make money. Nobody did.
And now it's an iconic film.
I know.
You know?
And he gave away all the money.
Did he?
Yeah. He set up a foundation and he said, that's blood money. It's all going to charity and for tolerance. And, you know, so these are all wonderful things. My brother's such a mensch. He was a mensch before, but now he's a Yiddish mensch too, you know?
And that's interesting because, you know, very often people who have the kind of success and fame that your brother has, it's very hard to stay a lovely person.
Yeah. I think humility is, you know, you need to remember where you came from. You need to stay humble. You need to know and count your blessings. And I think the family, he's definitely like that. He's just not about
that's lovely
his
to hear.
fame. Yeah.
I've never met him. It's lovely to hear. By the way, is it ever a problem for you? Are you ever uncomfortable because you become not Nancy Spielberg, you become Steven's sister?
I've gotten used to it. But you know what? You find you can't define your own self by like that. You know you can't. You know, I worked for a long time before I decided to get into films in an open way, because I used to just love writing stories. I did a lot of different things, and I did a lot of charity work and built a Children of Chernobyl. It was a Chabad organization, and we evacuated kids from Chernobyl. So did a lot of things. And I realized that sometimes when we would do these celebrity events, the celebrities would come because I asked. So I was like, okay, I'm doing something good.
Absolutely.
But I also can sniff who's my friend because they're looking past me. And I think we all have developed that radar. You know, we've developed that Spiely radar that you can tell who's earnest and who's not. And we do like to help people. It's not like, you know, and none of us are on that high and mighty. My parents brought us up to be like good kids.
They get a lot of credit.
Yeah.
Incident, talk about your parents. You know, the other thing people talk about is Steven Spielberg's mother had, what was it, a bagel shop, a deli? What was it?
It was a kosher dairy restaurant. It's not
kosher
a deli.
Dairy, okay.
Because it was better. It was like, it was unique. But my mom was such a unique lady. She was really, really different. And she was our Peter Pan. She was like, never grow up. She was one of the kids, a little irreverent, full of energy.
Oh, how wonderful.
She danced and pranced in that restaurant. She sat her little tushy down in every booth. She would eat the French fries off your plate. She would, you know, like give you wise advice that was not your typical Jewish advice. You know, one of the things, it's funny because I speak sometimes around, and everywhere I go, people go, I met your mother. You know what she said, you know what she did, and she loved my shoes. I gave her my shoes. I gave her my necklace. I go, my mother, the schnorrer, she was wearing everybody's shoes. She took somebody's shoes. So, you know, but she was wonderful.
That is wonderful.
And people loved her. So we reopened the restaurant just recently, the Milky Way in Beverly Hills, and it's all about her. It's great, great food, and we've gotten written up all over, but there are pictures of her everywhere.
Oh.
everywhere.
Good for you.
And a film that my brother did of her, of home movies that plays in a
Yes.
little, like we call it, like the living room. It's her favorite little corner. She wore denim overalls with diamonds. Like she was different, you know?
Yes.
And she was just, that's how we grew up. Like it's not typical to go camping when you're, Jews don't really go camping. We went camping. She would do fly fishing and they'd go to Aspen, go camping. So we were brought up with a different set of, they were good values, and they were, in many ways, they were Jewish values. We just didn't know that they came necessarily from.
But you know a lot more now. You're a very knowledgeable Jew. How did that happen? It's one thing to go to Israel, fall in love with Israel, fall in love with the kibbutz, have a daughter who's made Aliyah.
Right.
But you've become, your understanding of what this Jewish thing is much broader. By the way, you have a home in Beverly Hills?
No, I mean
in California somewhere.
In Westwood, we have
And you've lived for many years here on the East Coast.
Yes, I live in Riverdale.
In
the
Riverdale.
Bronx, yeah.
In a very Jewish community.
Yeah.
You told me your kids went to SAR.
SAR, yeah.
Salondra Akiva.
Right.
And my daughter went to SAR. Younger, she's older than your children.
Right.
But you were part of the Riverdale Jewish community.
Yes, but most of that comes, the Yeches in my family is not Spielberg. It's really from my husband's side.
What's your husband's name?
Shimon Katz.
Shimon Katz.
His
What's
father,
he do?
well, he was a commodities trader for years. Now he does private equity. His father, Rabbi Leon Katz, Eliezer Katz, was the spiritual leader in Passaic for like 60-something years.
Which movement? Orthodox?
Adas Israel. Orthodox, but his congregation was really more conservative, and he sort of knew who his congregation was and never pushed them. So it was not as black hat as it is today.
So it's conservadox or modern Orthodox.
But his father was a yada yada, whatever you call it, yada yada. He was one of these rabbis that the rabbis would go to. He was friendly with Lubavitcher Rebbe. My husband had private meetings with Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Really?
His father was the chief rabbi in Petach Tikva. So that's Degel Ruvain. So, when I go to Israel and I meet the Katz relatives, they go, "Who's Spielberg?" You know, they don't have TVs.
No, that's real yichus. You have real yichus on your husband's side.
And yes, and my husband also. I mean, he ordained, but he didn't become a rabbi. He became a businessman. But I've learned so much from him. I really have. I mean, we talk a lot. We're not the married couples that don't talk, and we're forever going through these and we have issues, not between us, but like we have second day yontif issues. We hate second day yontif. So we have issues in how we observe.
Okay.
Avi Weiss is our rabbi.
He is, okay.
So
Isn't he the most wonderful rabbi in all the world?
Yes, he is.
In the whole world,
and that's how I want my Judaism is a lot about song. Because to me, song is prayer in many ways. So it's that Karl Bach-y kind of thing. And I met Karl Bach when I was at that Jewish school when I was 11 years old. He came out there to sing for us, and I think I fell under his spell. And so I grew up with that music. So that sort of brought out my Yiddishkeit, was through song. And Avi was just so.
He is a very unique human being, an incredible rabbi.
Yes.
And the dearest of human beings. What about your children? I mean, you have one who's made Aliyah.
Right.
I'm assuming that you feel that they have a pretty strong Jewish identity?
They do. The Jessica is a Shomer Shabbos kosher babe on the beach in her bikini on Shabbos, but her phone is not with her. So we're still, and Melissa doesn't really follow, she is an equestrian, and so many of the horse shows were Shabbos. Horse
She's
shows.
Not married yet.
Neither of them.
Okay, when they get married, we'll see what they do.
You know what? I would never push my children.
No, but you
to observe. It's personal.
By the way, you're so wise. We didn't want our parents to push us.
Right.
If we didn't want, why would any parent push a child? At the same time, I'm only saying that you don't know yet where your children are going to end up.
You almost never know. I mean, how many people get later on in life when they're sort of they have time to sit and think, and they're not worried about working 24 hours. They wouldn't keep jobs. They switch over. I mean, it's evolving. I think your spirituality evolves at different stages of the game. So, I love them. They know they're Jewish. They observe the right way. Melissa lives in a Moishi house, which is a Federation-supported program. She does programming for other Jewish kids. So they're Jews. We're Jews. That's
By the way, is it hard for them to be Steven Spielberg's nieces?
They don't talk about it. They don't tell anybody.
Smart.
It comes out though.
Because
you know?
it's what you said. You know, and you get an antenna. You said it.
Yeah.
Where you begin to know, is this person about a real friendship, or are they using me for something else?
Right. So Jessica is a performer. She sings. She was on The Voice in Israel.
Oh, how lovely.
She writes music. She does voiceovers. She's doing something for Netflix. She's like wonderful like that. So she was very concerned that like The Voice would take her on so they could promote the show and use it. And she tried to get them to sign contracts. They weren't allowed to mention it. So they really go their own way. You know, when you're in the Jewish world, like one point my daughter went to a party. She goes, "How come they knew before I got there?" I said, "Honey, we're in the Jewish world. You know, it's sort of the elephant in the room. So sometimes it's just out there, but they never intro like that. That's not the way we do it. Listen, I'm Nancy Katz half the time. Whenever the plumber is giving me a quote, I'm Nancy Katz.
Very wise and wonderful.
You have to be very strategic how you use this, you know, if you're going to use it.
It sounds like you and your husband have built a very lovely life for yourself as a family, and also as a Jewish family.
Yeah, we have blessings, thank
you
God.
know?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
there's so much for you to be proud of. It, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm proud of your mother.
grateful for.
Yeah, and I think you give your mother and father a lot of credit, and I think that's appropriate. It doesn't happen by accident, and so, you know, I wish I had had a chance to really get to know them when they were both here and younger.
Right, right.
But they brought up a very wonderful daughter who's done a wonderful job in so many ways. What's next for you?
Well, there's a few more films in the works. I also worked on The Map, by the way, which is it's about Maccabi Tel Aviv basketball team, 1977.
And they win.
Against Red Army
Yeah,
Moscow. It's a
terrific
And
film.
I love those stories that are Americans joining with Israel.
You give me chills.
Absolutely
right.
you know, because that is a positive message.
Yes.
And, you know, sort of fighting the bad guys is a good thing.
Yes.
You know, so at that point, the Russians were the bad guys. You know, it's always switching. And we started shooting, and we're editing and still shooting a film about Roman Vishniak. So that is being directed by Laura Bialis, who did Rock in the Red Zone, the film about the musicians in Sderot, and she did another film, Refusnik. Roberta Grossman is producing. I'm executive producing. Sophie Sartain, who wrote Above and Beyond, is writing it. Chris Callister, our editor, is editing it. So it's the party again.
It's your team.
Yeah, it's a team.
But you should tell the audience, what's an executive producer do?
There's several kinds of executive producers. My role is basically raising the money necessary.
That's how you begin.
Yes. Making the connections, and I also sit on the creative. I'm not the final voice. The producer is the final say. So when I was the producer of Above and Beyond, and we would sit in the editing room and make edits and cuts, my decision was the final decision. But I think what I've really learned is how to listen and work as a team. It's not about being the boss. And as an executive producer, and Roberta's such a collaborative person, we all share. We all stick our 2 cents in. Roberta will be the final decision on that. So raise money, create strategic partnerships for distribution as well.
Absolutely.
And work with the film festivals. So with with Who Will Write Our History right now, we are working on broadcast and a shortlist campaign to be considered for an Oscar. So that means raising more money. And luckily, I have really great people. Ron Lauder got involved. He loves the film. You know, he's very involved in Eastern European Jewry. And the people, so then there are executive producers that have given a lot of money. So they sort of join me in the credit on the film. So that's why there's 2 types. There's one in name only because they've supported the film with financially.
Exactly.
And then there are those that have to gather
Who are
the acorns.
doing work as well, even
right.
participate in the creative and also help the marketing.
And it's hard. It's hard to raise money when your last name is Spielberg, because the first thing that people say is, why aren't you getting the money from your brother, or don't you have it, or get it from his friends? And I don't roll like that.
That's not fair.
Yeah, I don't roll like that. You know, my brother is so very proud, and he's supportive in his way, but he's by no means my largest supporter, and I would never want him to be.
As I remember, when the credits come up, you and Ron Lauder are listed as executive producer.
Right. And Ori Eisen, another incredible guy.
I don't think so.
It's second card.
Yes.
And a guy named Al Berg, who was wonderful,
Yes.
who just passed away. And it was his, he did so much for the film.
Okay. Since you were involved in creative, I said to you earlier that I was just amazed, number one, at what your visuals were, your file footage, file footage. Also, it obviously is restored. It's tremendous video quality, and normally the video we've seen of the 1940s is grainy and hazy. So where'd you get, what's the story behind the film footage?
We don't really restore it, but what we do is, first of all, we have people that search through the archives. And it just means you need to pay more money to dig deeper, because there are those photos that are floating on the top. We wanted some things new, so it takes research, and you're paying a researcher, so it means I had to raise more money, and then you want the highest quality.
Are you telling me that you found film of that quality?
Yeah, there's color footage of Warsaw before the war. None of that was touched up.
We never see it.
I know.
Except in your film.
And there's somebody that gave us some personal footage, which happened in Above and Beyond also. When you can find somebody connected to the story that says, oh, I happen to have in the attic some rolls of film. And there are people out there that have this. Someone told me that they have it and they don't know what to do with it. And I said, you've got to give it to the Steven Spielberg Film Archives at Hebrew University, or give it to somebody that will preserve the film disintegrates. So it is about, getting the high res as best as we can. We have to get clearance, and that's, it's more money.
Okay, then I'm looking at the set, because I would swear I was in Warsaw of the 1940s.
Right.
Where did you do this?
We filmed it in Łódź, and we rebuilt the Warsaw Ghetto. We have a set designer, Frank Gampel from Israel, who also did Above and Beyond, who came there and worked with set designers in Poland, because we had a co-producer. And again, it's research. So a death notice on the wall is the actual death notice of the person that died. So everything to the nth degree, again, was researched and built. And it was a derelict part of town. It was sort of like the druggies and the drunks were there, and the windows were broken, and it was going to be eventually renovated and restored. So it sort of boded well.
Excellent.
And I remember the first time.
Were you on location?
I was on location, not for the whole time. I lucked out.
But at some point.
Yes, and the day I went, I was the day that they had about 110 extras in the marketplace.
Who were those extras? Are these people who live there, or what?
Yeah, they're Poles, and the actors had to learn their lines in Yiddish, which was really, they were very, very.
Yes, but I should have said that. The narration is in English, but when the characters speak to each other, they speak in Yiddish and there's subtitles.
Right.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and there's sometimes when there's a little bit of Polish spoken also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
It was
so
challenging.
real, you know?
It was challenging. Of course, I got some critics that said, well, the Yiddish accent aren't great.
Oh, please.
So we did redub a couple things, and for the percentage that really understand, But really, they did an incredible job. But it still was hard for me, because it was the first time I was in Poland, and I wasn't comfortable. And I wake up, and I get in a car, and I go to the set, and I walk into the ghetto. So, I felt like I was transported. And every elderly person in the film, I was looking at them saying, what did your family do? I couldn't help it. It was just a natural reaction. And there's a young girl in the film who's very sweet, and her mother was on set with her as laws, as she had to have somebody accompany her. And she wanted to meet Spielberg, but of course she really wanted to meet Steve, but I was the only one there. So we have our little meeting, and her mother whispers to me, we're Jewish. But she whispered it to me on the set, which was telling. And then she said, and my mother was in the Warsaw Ghetto. So for her granddaughter to be in this film was so meaningful for them.
Doesn't give you chills. Amazing.
And I'm friends with this girl on Facebook. We're buddies.
Are you?
Yeah.
That's so
Don't
sweet.
understand a lot of what she says to me,
Doesn't matter.
but I did a report for her school. She sent me questions. I sent them back. In English, she sent me a copy in Polish. I don't know what she wrote, but we connected. So yeah, it was interesting. It was very interesting.
There are children who are in your film who they must be real life children, right?
Yes.
Where'd you find children to be the children of the Warsaw Ghetto in the parts that are the dramatizations? Where'd you find these people?
The casting. The co-producer that we worked with, Match and Spark, were wonderful and very, very, professional. So we really, it was like making a feature film.
By the way, I said to myself, this is not I know it's a documentary.
Right.
But it has all of the feel and quality of a feature film. Right. And I said to myself, this must have cost the kind of money that normally is associated with a low-budget feature film.
Right.
Am I right?
Yes, you are. Because really, our documentaries we're working on are under $2 million usually, and this one's over.
Okay.
This is over. But nothing like, you go to a Spielberg production, and it's there were no dinosaurs in this film.
Yes, I
That's
understand.
right. No sharks. But yes, it was definitely costlier, and but I think everybody who donated money, because it's all done as not-for-profit, realized the importance of the story. They did it because they believed in the project, and they trusted in us, which is really wonderful, and that puts a tremendous amount of pressure that we deliver the right thing. And in the scenes where you have Rachel Auerbach walking through, so you have archival footage of Jews going into the building, and then Rachel sort of, and she's very muted colors. So we're not trying to fool anybody, but there's a very slight, color to her, and she is walking past, and when she's in, and you start the recreation, it goes into full color. So there's several scenes that it's blend like that. It's beautiful. There's one part where she's walking through a photo of the just totally destroyed ghetto on the way to...
This is at the end of the film.
At the end of the film, yeah.
A very powerful moment.
Right. Roberta did some of that with Hannah Senesh. She did the film Blessed is the Match, The Life and Death of Hannah Senesh. And she did some of that where a photograph would come to life. And it was so powerful. So we did cut a lot of that. We had more, but everything has to be controlled. You don't want to
I didn't think of that. There must be some
saturate
real
everybody.
gems on the cutting room floor, because that's life. That's life of the filmmaker.
Yeah.
But my guess is there were some absolute gems which, if you could have gone on forever, would be in the film.
And there's a lot more to Ringelblum's story that we couldn't fit in.
Really?
A lot more about his escape. I think we have some outtakes.
He was in a labor camp at one point.
Yeah, and then
he escapes.
somebody,
We don't know how. All of a sudden he returns.
Somebody, right. So two people came to him, and they brought him a uniform to escape. And he said, I'm here with my son. I'm not leaving my kid.
And?
And so he refused to go. So he had a chance. He had a chance to escape.
But he does come back to the bunker.
Yes, he comes back to the bunker. But there was a chance for him to escape, and he wouldn't leave. After that. I think it was after the bunker.
Is this when they're finally discovered? They're betrayed.
Right.
And toward the end of the movie, the last group, and
Yes.
he's part of it with his wife and
his
son.
Yes.
What a touching scene.
I know.
And he, you don't know what he's saying to his son, but the sense is he's saying something comforting to his son, and his wife, who's terrific in the whole movie. And then they walk up the stairs. And basically, that's the last time you see him.
I think he survived 4 days after that.
Yes, it says 4 days, and then all three of them were shot.
Right.
At least that's what the movie says. And I assume the movie's...
Yeah.
Does Israel know about the film?
Yes. Israel, we had, first of all, we had this massive global simultaneous screening event on January 27th. We were stationed at UNESCO headquarters in Paris. We showed the film in 56 countries, in over 355 venues in 12 languages. We did a Facebook Live event where we connected to Auschwitz, Jewish Historical Institute, U.S. Holocaust Museum, and Museum of Tolerance. We had back and forth dialogue, and we had a panel discussion after the film. And it was unbelievable. And there were 50 screenings in Poland alone. 50. Poland is, and Israel also had some screenings. Israel showed it again for Yom HaShoah, and it was on Israeli TV, but it wasn't placed in. Sometimes they feel like they are oversaturated. So it did play in the Jerusalem Jewish Film Festival as well, and it has a TV run there. So.
But Israel has basically reacted positively to this film.
Oh yeah, they've definitely reacted positively. I just think that In the larger film festival scene in Israel, they are leaning toward non-Jewish topics, or non-Holocaust, I should say.
Yes.
So the Jerusalem International Film Festival was interested in more of an international flavor and didn't program it. So that was very disappointing.
I was about to
Very
say, how disappointing, and they made a mistake.
Yeah.
do I understand, Bubba, you also have a home in Israel?
Yeah, in Jerusalem. Yeah.
Isn't that lovely?
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's really, we're going there
Nancy,
Sunday.
you have a home in Jerusalem.
I know.
You're from Arizona.
I know.
And now you have a home.
The long, dusty road I've come.
Isn't that wonderful?
It's really something. It
Do you
really
love
is.
Israel?
I love Israel. I love Israel. I'm frightened. You know, I'm frightened of what's happening. I'm frightened that with the rise in anti-Semitism, with the Israel bashing, with the people there's not even a distinction. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
Yes.
There's not a distinction. It's so
Why
clear.
don't people get it?
Oh, I don't know. I think the world has gone mad. There is some sick bug in some people's brains, and the rhetoric is, it frightens me in the way that people must have been frightened listening to Hitler come to power in some ways. And I'm not saying from Trump. I'm saying
it has nothing to do with Trump, right?
No,
Yeah, no.
You know, and it's very scary.
Okay, and
when do we sound the alarms? I mean, you know, what did they do in Germany? When they said, nah,
here?
never. Yeah.
No.
It can't happen, right? It can't.
No, and by the way, I'm thinking to myself as I'm watching your film, people who think that there's anything remotely in America, with all of its mishigas and its problems, you want to understand what the Shoah is, watch who will write our history,
right.
and you'll understand all the signs, and it didn't happen overnight.
Right.
And one of the things you have to say is, before the Shoah, no one could imagine it could happen.
Right.
And so it's easy to be critical of Jews who stayed, except we weren't there, and we weren't invested, and we didn't have the perspective, and what we do now. But the difference in terms of step by step, there's nothing like that in America.
Right.
And the system is different, and the government is different, and the Germany had centuries of virulent anti-Semitism. That's not our. We have Washington's letter to the Torah synagogue. I'm sorry, it's just apples and oranges.
Right. Right.
I'm scared, however, about a larger problem. I'm worried about European anti-Semitism. I am shocked about Western European anti-Semitism, which, whether it's Muslim-fed or not, it's in Western Europe where I thought you'd never see.
I know.
In our lifetime?
I know. It is so frightening. It
You
is
know?
so frightening
Okay.
when you think of, I mean, you think of these countries where we go to vacation.
Yes.
They don't want us. I mean, I say, I've got 3 strikes. I'm an American, they don't want us. I'm a Jew and I'm a woman, so I'm in trouble, you know.
And you're white.
Well, and I'm white, okay.
By the way, but I wanted to ask you, though, because you're talking here about your concern, and why don't people get it? And I'm going to give you a notion, and you tell me whether A, you understand what I'm talking about, and if so, then I want an answer.
Okay.
For me to say that I'm in the entertainment world is you know, somebody's playing in Little League, and then you're talking to a major leaguer.
Right.
I'm not in your league. I've been very lucky.
I'm not in my league. If
You
my
are.
league is Steve's league, I'm not in that league.
Then there are leagues, aren't
Okay,
there?
yeah.
Even in that level.
Yeah.
But you know people whom I don't know. And I've been very lucky. I've been involved in theater and producing on Broadway. So I know I have a certain level. But what I'm aware of is that in the industry, in the entertainment industry, it tends to be, not universally, but it tends to be liberally driven. And at the moment, the Palestinian and the Palestinian cause has been elevated within the entertainment community.
Right.
While Israel, which stands for every single value that we, as a liberal American community, stand for, suddenly is the bad guy.
Right, I know.
It is very saddening to me, and I want to know the extent to which you understand what I'm saying, and then if so, I want to know from your perspective, and whether you ever talked to Steve about this, why does it happen?
I understand. I feel it. I feel it in many ways. I, above and beyond, had no broadcast. Nobody would touch it because Israel was in it. You know, that's a problem. I know, I even had a feature film deal and I still have people that want to make it into a feature film, but the problem is it has Israel in it. And that suddenly is the word that makes the hair stand up on the back of their necks. And I feel it all over Hollywood. And the people that I know that are supportive of Israel are closet supporters.
Yes, they're
They're
quiet.
closet, yeah.
Yes.
My brother loves Israel. My brother doesn't stand on a soapbox. In general, he doesn't do that. He does things quietly. He doesn't want credit. You know, he just does, he has his way of doing things. But this needs someone to stand up. I think that a lot of it comes from, it's almost like the popular notion. Do you remember when Kabbalah was the real hot? Or even, you know, what Tom Cruise and his whole thing with Scientology, which is losing Hollywood's interest now. Is this a phase? Is this because someone else is doing it? Do they really know, or just they drink this much of the Kool-Aid and it's enough? And they jump on the cause. And I feel a lot of it is ignorance. I hate to say it. They're not looking deeply. They're looking at a people who, there's a plight, there's a problem. And they're looking at the surface. They're not looking at, there's Hezbollah, there's Hamas. There are people whose doctrine, who you can read it, Google it, it is to destroy us. And if there is any attempt at peace, it's just a crock until we can get closer so we can destroy them. It's written in black and white. Denounce it. Say, yes, we want a lasting peace. And then there's a possibility. You know, and I know walls is the hot topic these days. You know, but that wall in Israel has stopped suicide bombers. And I've walked in the streets. I was there during the Intifada with 2 little kids. And every time I walked by a bus stop that winter, I would rush my kids by because there were people blowing themselves up at bus stops. And I had to try to explain to my children, if I say run, don't say why, Mom, just run. You know, I mean, I just, you know, I've seen a difference from being told, don't leave your apartment because a suicide bomber came into Jerusalem. We have, you know, and from that not being as much of an issue. So, you know, I want safety in both my homes. There are these things that Hollywood grabs onto. I just wish that they would listen to some level. You know, the Creative Community for Peace, it's wonderful. It's an entertainment-driven group that they really need to make a bigger push. To get those names on the papers that say Israel has a right to defend itself, and so that there has to be bigger efforts. I'll do what I can. Like, I'm so little, though. I'm really not, no one's really listening to me, but I do what I can.
Come here. I listen to you. You know, I'm in love with you. I am.
Well, I told you I'm your fan already, so love fest.
Yes, you have done extraordinary work.
Thank
you know, I don't know what
Mark.
level you're talking about. All I know is you're doing something. You are making a contribution, both to the American scene and to the Jewish scene and to the state of Israel. Kol hakavod to you. I wish you kol tuv hatzlacha, and I hope you come. Further, you should come back with Roberta at one point.
Okay.
But I hope there are other times that there are reasons for us to meet here on this table for l'chaim. That chair is
and then
always
you put
for
something
you.
besides water in here.
Whatever you want, darling.
Right.
Whatever you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nancy Spielberg, filmmaker extraordinaire and the executive producer of Who Will Write Our History? The story of the Oyneg Shabes archive of the Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto. I cannot recommend this movie to you enough. And you know, there are times when people come here, they've written a book, or they've done a movie, or they've done something theatrical. And if I have them on, it's because I like it enough to talk to you about it. And because if I don't like it enough, I simply, as politely as I can, say we can't do it. So if I talk about a book, or I show you a movie, or anything cultural, it's because it has moved me to some extent, and I'm hoping it's moving you. This is different from me. This is different. I am almost begging you. You care about Jewish life? You care about who we are? Do you care about how we got here? We are living in post-Shoah Jewish life. And I don't want to be a Jew because of the Shoah. I am not a Jew to deny Hitler a posthumous victory. But I want to understand where we have come from and what Jewish life went through. And I want to do it because it's my family. What happened to the Jews in World War II, in the Holocaust, it's about 6 individual million people, all of whom are part of my family. This is my family story. So when something comes along, like Who Will Write Our History, and it opens eyes, you will see and understand the Shoah differently. By the way, I know there are many of you watching. You lived through it. You see survivors on JBS all the time. It'll be painful, but you'll know it's real. And I'm not criticizing any other documentary or feature film. You've heard me. I rail against Life is Beautiful. Not because I don't think it's a good film. It's a fine film. But it's a lie. And I don't want anybody to lie about the Holocaust. And you saw me many, many times with Elie Wiesel of blessed memory. And he said the same thing. There's certain things you don't lie about. You don't lie about the Shoah. And it's very hard to do something cinematic that's not in some way a distortion or a romanticization. This film is honest. It's hard to watch at times, but it's not brutal. It's very human. And I'm being honest with you. I say to myself, would I have had the courage to be part of that group that met clandestinely and that was dedicated to preserving a memory so that one day no one could say it didn't happen or it wasn't as bad. It was worse. Whatever we imagine, it was worse. And you've heard people, you've heard the witnesses who are here on JBS say to me, no, you don't understand, Mark. It was worse. It's not about worse. This movie is not about worse. This movie is about honest, and it is about people. It's human, and it takes us back into something which when we are done with the movie, we're not the same. So I'm telling you, if you have a chance, this is a movie you make a point of seeing, and Nancy tells us if it's on Hulu, it's available to everybody. Maybe it'll be on Netflix, maybe it'll be on Amazon Prime. Every now and then it's being shown in a synagogue somewhere, at a Jewish center somewhere. I'm begging you to see it. And then when you see it, I want you to write me. Email me. And I will forward your emails on to Nancy Spielberg. And she'll show it to Roberta. Because she should know and Roberta should know, all the people should know. Ron Lauder should know that there's something here very, very special. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed meeting Nancy, who I'm now in love with. I hope you'll always be in touch with me as I ask you to every single week. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook page, tweet me. I always love hearing from you. Love it. And remember now, you can listen to L'Chaim podcast wherever you go. Go to iTunes or Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts. Listen to the L'Chaim podcast. You'll be able to hear Nancy Spielberg and all the other programs that we've done beforehand. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'Chaim, my friends, to life.
L'Chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double high or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please, indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.